We've been speaking with top economists to better understand what this economic climate means for companies' bottom lines. Today, I'm speaking with Berkeley professor Robert Reich. He served as the United States Secretary of Labor under President Clinton and has authored countless books, articles, and videos on the future of our economy and workforce. Hi, Professor. It's nice to speak with you again.
Nice to see you, Lindsey.
Great. All right, let's start with the biggest headlines. What impact will President Trump's tariffs have on the economy in the short and long term?
Well, the short term, the word is chaos. And the problem with chaos is that nobody dares make any investments. In fact, a lot of global investors are pulling their money out of the United States right now because of the uncertainty. Uncertainty is the enemy of investment. Uncertainty is the enemy of economic growth. Uncertainty is the enemy of really what you want in an economy. And the problem, in a nutshell, is that the president doesn't seem to know what he wants. I mean, the tariffs are moving in so many different directions. The exemptions, the possible exemptions, the temporary exemptions, the possibility of maybe moving in this direction or that direction, all of it is generating more uncertainty in this economy for CEOs, for investors, for major players than I have seen in 50, 60 years.
Yeah, we've certainly seen that in the market. Who wins and who loses with this approach?
Well, there are a lot of losers. The losers are spread out across the global economy. There are two different issues here. One is the uncertainty that I've just talked about. The second is if the tariffs actually go into effect as high as some people think that they might, and as high as the president has mentioned they will. Now, if they do go into effect, nobody wins. I mean, we're back to Smoot-Hawley 1930 tariffs. The problem with generalized tariffs on all goods coming into the United States, 10% or higher, is that every consumer has to pay more. That means every consumer effectively is poorer, faces a larger tax. It is not just a large tax, it's also a regressive tax in the sense that consumers who have lower incomes, they have to pay a larger portion of their incomes in the form of this tariff tax. That means that everybody around the economy, not just the exporters to the United States, but also the United States companies, many United States companies are actually assembling abroad. They're trying to get their supply chains back organized after the pandemic. It took them a year and a half or more to get those supply chains back to where they should be, and now everything is up in the air again. So everyone loses. Nobody wins from a trade war. Let's be very, very clear about that.
Well, the argument is that this will bring back manufacturing to the U.S.
Lindsey, I don't see the tariffs bringing manufacturing back to the United States, because what the president is talking about, I assume, are manufacturing jobs, not just manufacturing factories. We're talking about jobs. The problem is that most of those jobs were lost not because of trade. They were lost because of automation. They were lost because of advanced technologies. You go into any assembly plant in the United States, or really anywhere in any developed nation around the world, and even in Mexico, in the Maquiladora region of Mexico, the northern part of Mexico, where a lot of plants were set up, they're robots. They're numerically controlled machine tools. They are advanced technologies that require maybe somebody looking at a monitor, but not that many people looking at monitors. And if they're looking at monitors, they've got to be very well trained. They've got to know exactly what they are doing. We don't have people who are that well trained to begin with. So we're not talking about manufacturing jobs realistically in the United States.
Right. So is the U.S. labor force ready to bring back these manufacturing jobs, especially if they're mostly going to be AI jobs? Like, what role can American workers play in this version of the economy that would be stood up in 10 or 20 years after these tariffs go into effect?
Well, let's be clear. In 10 or 20 years, if there are any quote, manufacturing jobs, that is, jobs that are related to assembling or welding or putting together various components or even making components, those jobs are going to be mostly artificial intelligence, mostly automated, mostly computerized, way beyond the digital computers we have right now. In order to do those jobs, if there are people involved, they do need to monitor those complex machinery. They also do need to repair and be able to repair that complex machinery. To be able to monitor or repair that complex machinery, you've got to have a number of years beyond high school of technical training. We don't have that capacity in the United States. Now, should we? Yes. Will we? Maybe, if the demand is there. But we're not talking about a huge number of jobs to begin with.
That makes sense. All right, I want to take it in a slightly different direction now. Will the tariffs help the trade deficit, and should Americans even care about the trade deficit?
Deficits sound bad. Nobody likes the word deficit. But if we used a slightly different word, suppose we said other nations are basically allowing us to buy more from them than we sell to them, and they're keeping our IOUs, and they are happy to do that. Well, that is not sustainable forever. We do need to address that. That does give other nations holding our IOUs a little bit of potential power over us, although they don't want those IOUs to lose a lot of value. So it's not at all clear that trade deficits are all that bad. I think, again, we've got to be a little bit clearer, and the White House has to be much clearer about what the objectives are here.
Some of the economists I've been speaking to are saying that this is the end of globalization. Would you agree with that? Or this is the end of the American empire? Just like you're talking about with these IOUs as kind of like our political clout across the globe. How is that changing now if we have these tariffs?
Well, we could see with the tariffs and also with global investors, including Americans, pulling their money out of T-bills and out of dollars, we could see the beginning of the end of the American hegemony. That is, the era in which the T-bill was the safest place to put your money in the world, and the dollar was the universal reserve currency in which everybody traded. Now, that would be too bad. That would mean that we would lose power, and we would also lose a lot of wealth in this country, because having the T-bill be the safest place in the world and having the dollar be the reserve currency helps all of us Americans here because we get, in a sense, a free ride. We get the benefits of the rest of the global economy investing in us. If that's over, well, it may be over, but why make policy changes that cause it to be over sooner than it might otherwise be over? That is, why precipitate the end of the American hegemony? Why precipitate the reduction in the wealth of America that all this represents?
Yeah, people called it a self-inflicted wound. I'm wondering, it's kind of exactly what you're talking about, but what will the trade war do to the value of the dollar internationally as a reserve trade currency and then also for Americans day to day?
As the rest of the world, including American interests and American investors, lose confidence in American economic policy, and I'm talking about all American economic policy. I'm talking about the trade wars, the deficit, the inability, presumably, to have a budget, a federal budget that doesn't generate huge deficits for years and years. Well, I think that then you do have a potential, I'm not going to use the word crisis, Lindsey, but you do have the problem of the dollar losing its reserve currency status, the dollar dropping relative to other currencies, and also the problem of, ironically, the United States no longer being a terribly good place to invest. There's a co-problem here, and I want to mention it as quickly as I can, because it means the American economy is no longer necessarily a place where very talented people want to come. This is a huge potential problem. We are as powerful as we are economically in part because we have for 150 or 200 years been the place where very talented people around the world want to come and build companies and build factories and innovate and be entrepreneurs. If we are no longer friendly, or if we no longer have a reputation as a place that is friendly to that kind of foreign entrepreneurial spirit, if we become Fortress America, as we look like we're becoming, that does more to reduce our future wealth than almost anything else.
Sure. That brings me to my next question, which how will the labor force change if the U.S. is attracting less immigrants and also, like you're saying, less businesses and everything, investments, everything that comes with migration to the U.S.?
Many people have a false view of immigration. That false view has been fostered by the president, that immigrants are bad somehow. Immigration is a problem. Immigrants are good. Most of us here, unless we are the descendants of Native Americans, came from immigrants. We came from people who were seeking a better life, who had huge ambition, huge ideas, huge, they wanted to come here because this was such a wonderful place to start businesses and to make families, and it was a land of freedom. If we lose that, and we are on the way to losing that, every time an immigrant who has a permanent residence here, who is here legally, is arrested and deported on some charge, we are losing big time the number of people who want to come to the United States, who feel that we are a safe and a wonderful place to be.
For sure. All right, I'm going to take a risk here. So there's this idea among some environmentalists that with the increased tariffs, we're going to decrease the amount of maybe disposable items that are imported to the U.S. So could the tariffs potentially lead to a win for environmentalism because we'll end up reusing things that are already in the U.S.?
That's a stretch, Lindsey. I mean, that really is a stretch. I am the first one to look for silver linings. I mean, I really am. I haven't heard that before, but it seems to me not very probable. Because I mean, what we need in this country is much more, not just recycling, but reusing of all kinds of products and goods. Now, it may be, and we saw this during the pandemic, that if people are in terribly tight straits, that they have to reuse, that they are not going to be consuming as much. But you don't want an economy based upon people being in that kind of poverty or near poverty.
Yes, for sure. All right, just a general, what's the biggest risk to a company's bottom line right now?
Uncertainty. I want to emphasize this because the first Trump administration also created a great deal of uncertainty. And the second Trump administration is creating even more uncertainty. And it's uncertainty not only with regard to tariffs, it's also uncertainty with regard to budgets, with regard to lifting the budget ceiling, the debt ceiling, uncertainty with regard to even what the taxes are going to be. And you pile uncertainty on uncertainty on uncertainty, and it's very, very bad for business.
So how can companies protect their bottom lines in this political uncertainty?
Well, I want to distinguish between global American companies that really are all over the world. They have many options. They can move their manufacturing to places where the environment is more stable. They can try to get into markets that are larger and are growing, like the Chinese market. There's no reason that American-based global companies cannot sell in China. Even if we have a trade war, they will manufacture in China. They'll do more of their assembly in China. But if you're talking about the small companies, and I'm talking now about companies that really are dependent on big companies, big manufacturers or big service companies in the United States, they are in a bind, many of them, because they don't know where the economy is going. They don't have that many options. They are clearly and appropriately worried about personnel, about labor shortages. Many of them are dependent on talented workers who have green cards, for example. They are in a pickle.
Do we have any advice? Like, the audience for this is often small to medium-sized business owners. What can they do?
My only advice is if they have any political influence whatsoever, and some of them do because they are in states that are swing states, or they are states that are Republican states, what they ought to do is call their members of Congress, their Republican senators and representatives, and tell them that this environment is very, very negative for their businesses. The uncertainty is bad. The tariffs, in terms of components that they need, are bad for their businesses. They really do want and need more stability.